going to call to order the Fayette County's Board of Education meeting. As you can see, we're in our new digs tonight, and we appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this new facility, and appreciate all the construction workers who got everything done on time, and staff who had to move. But we welcome you into our new home. And right now, I'd like to ask for a moment of reflection so we can all think about the things in our lives that we're grateful for. Thank you. We'll now have the presentation of colors by the Fayette County High School Junior ROTC Color Guard Team. We'd now like to have our pledgers come forward to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Come on up.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And parents can take the photos. All right, next we need the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, sir. The agenda is ready for the board to consider. We would recommend the board approve.
Need a motion to approve the agenda. Linda Berry, this is always our favorite part of the meeting where we get to honor our outstanding students and staff.
Well, welcome everyone, and to our students and employees who are being recognized tonight. You will be the first recognitions in our new boardroom, so we're very happy to have you here tonight and to be doing recognitions with you. The first recognitions that we are going to do this evening is for the West Georgia Technology Competition. Now, Fayette's elementary, middle, and high schools all competed in this competition. This was our second time going to the competition. We competed in the competition last year, And thanks to our Chief Technology Director, we were introduced to the competition. We had not known about it previously, but he got us involved, and we got involved pretty late last year. But we did a really good job at that competition. We went into it for the first time ever and brought home 32% of the first place honors from that competition, which was pretty phenomenal with not a whole lot of time to prepare. Well, this year we had a lot more time to prepare. And so do you want to take a guess at the percentage of first place awards we came away with this year? You know? Almost 71%. We took home first place awards, 71%. And in addition to that, Fayette County students took home 48% of the top 3 placements in the competition. So we really went in there and had a very strong showing, and I'm sure the other schools in the region wonder what happened and probably regret that Fayette County schools found out about the competition and started showing up to it. But we are very proud of our students, and so tonight we are going to honor 49 first place winners from our elementary, middle, and high schools. And these winners are advancing to the state competition next month. So first up, we have Flat Rock Middle School. If we may have them come forward with their coach. Okay, on the Flat Rock team, we have Cyrese Bosquet. She won in animation. Okay. Kyle Dice, digital game design. Tyler Allen and Lila Omar, graphic design. Christine Sharper and Ashley Taylor, internet applications. And Zara Washington and Sierra Brown, mobile apps. And their coach is Mark Parlier. Next up, we have J.C. Booth Middle School. If they may come up with their coach. On this team, we have, let me hand you certificates. Valerie Kalkowski. And Miss. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. And Isabella Hickey, and they won in audio production. Nick Hacker and Gabe Mawanda, device modification. Allie Ermelieve and Lark Sisk, digital photo modification or production. Drew Lackley and Christian Clark, programming challenge. Jackson Lovejoy, project programming. Irene Roger and Rebecca Bushmeyer, video production. And the coach with them here tonight is Dr. Kathleen Lanneman. Congratulations. Next up, we have McIntosh High School. Okay, on this team, we have Jiaming Zhang, digital game design. Ian McCurman and Jiaming Zhang, programming challenge. And Sam Triplett, programming challenge. Wasn't able to make it, okay. And the coach wasn't able to make it tonight either, and we had a few more students who couldn't make it from McIntosh. Okay. Congratulations. Okay, next up, if we may have Oak Grove Elementary with their coach come forward. From Oak Grove Elementary, we have Sakit Sanun in audio production, Eliza Huber in graphic design, Yashwan Ramesh Babu in mobile apps, Manish Gurugari and Parth Mahajan in multimedia applications, Jordan McKee in digital photo production, and their coach is Lori Walters. Congratulations. Okay, next up is Peachtree City Elementary. From Peachtree City Elementary, we have Arush Hemachandran, 3D modeling. And Jessica Yuan and Sarah Hottie in robotics. And their coach is Carolyn Merzek. Okay, next up, if I may have our student from Rising Star Middle School. And with us from Rising Star is Liam Begley, and he won in robotics. Okay, next up is Robert J. Birch, Elementary. And from Robert J. Birch, we have Simone Antoine and Jalen Edu in digital photo production. Kirsten Smotherman and Reagan Harvey in productivity design. And Sam Brown in internet applications. And their coach is Lisa Champlin. Next up is Spring Hill Elementary School. From Spring Hill, we have Catlin Giacometto and Lily Van Vorst. And they won in internet applications. And their coach with us tonight is Jeff Eller. Congratulations. Okay, next up is Starks Mill High School. From Stars Mill, we have Ayan Bakali and Felipe Schwantz in video production. Dorothy Daniel in animation, and Becca Algaze in multimedia applications. And their coach is Pat Coleman. Congratulations. All right, and that concludes our West Georgia Technology Competition Award winners. Congratulations again to all of our winners from that competition. Next up, if I can recognize our students from Flat Rock Middle School. If I can have the ICE team come forward. Okay, standing behind me is Flat Rock Middle's first Lego League team. And their acronym is ICE, and that stands for Impressive Coalition of Eagles. Now, ICE, they went to the FLL competition, they went to the regional, and they won the research award. Then they went to the super regional, where they won the research award again, and that advanced them to the state competition, where they also won the research award. So 3 times they won that research award. Yes. Every year, the FLL gives a challenge for students to solve a real-world problem. And this year, the challenge was to focus on the mental health of astronauts while they're in space. Or that was what I chose to do. The challenge was actually the problems humans could face during a long-distance exploration in space. And so I decided to focus on the mental health of astronauts. And after the team had a long discussion about what they would take with them if they were to travel to Mars, one thing was constant, and that was a cat. So they decided to research the benefits of pet ownership, and from there, they developed a two-part innovative solution. The first part uses an augmented reality program that would allow astronauts with AR glasses to see their pet floating in space alongside of them. The second part is a lifelike plush toy that is custom made to look just like the astronaut's pet. It would have sensors designed to stimulate many of the senses associated with pet ownership, and this would help to reduce the feelings of isolation and loneliness. So our team members from Flat Rock are Madison Lohr, Brayoung Guidry, Imani Newton, Dylan Felker, Nicholas Jenkins, Tyson White, Darian Nadal, Jaden Torres, and Michael Bash. And our coaches were Melissa Lohr and Tristan Torres. Congratulations. Okay, next up, we are going to recognize our middle school first place winners from the Regional Griffin RISA Math Competition. Fayette County's middle schools had a very strong showing at the Griffin RISA Middle School Math Competition. We had teams earning the top 2 placements in 2 divisions, and we had students taking the top 2 placements in the individual winners overall category. So tonight, we're going to recognize the first place winners from Division 2, and they are from Flat Rock Middle School. If I may have our team from Flat Rock come forward. Our team members are Brooke Lloyd, Aaron Bryant, Vince Fawn, Matthew Seuss, and Connor Lanneman. And the individual first place winner is Brooke Lloyd. And their coach is Monique Williams. Congratulations. Now, if I may have our Rising Star Middle School team come forward, please. And they took first place in Division 3. And our team members are Tito Aloof, Cade Daniel, Michael Lynn, Emily Stank, and Richard Wang. And their coach, Vicki Anderson. Congratulations. Okay, next up, I am about to introduce to you a real-life superhero. If I may have Jeremy King come forward, please. Mr. King is a paraprofessional at Bennett's Mill Middle School. One day in the not too recent past, Mr. King was transitioning from one classroom to another when he noticed that one of his students was in distress. And as he looked closer, he realized this student was choking. So he went and performed the Heimlich maneuver on the student, and after 2 pops to the back, the object in the student's throat popped out, and Mr. King saved this young man's life. And Bennett's Mill Middle School and the young man's parents all consider him a hero, and so do we. And we are very honored and humbled to be able to recognize you tonight. And thank you for having the knowledge to use that Heimlich maneuver and the cool-headedness to be able to take care of that situation and save that young man's life. Okay, our last recognition this evening is for Dr. Kathleen Lanneman. If I may have her come forward, please. Dr. Landman is a 7th grade life sciences teacher at J.C. Booth Middle School, and she is one of 3 winners of the 2018-2019 Innovation in Teaching competition. And this is a recognition and reward opportunity for Georgia teachers who utilize innovative instructional strategies to advance student achievement. Dr. Landman received a $5,000 stipend to implement her award-winning classroom unit on the concepts of active and passive transport in cells. And in addition to that $5,000, J.C. Booth Middle School received a $10,000 grant to support the creation of a mobile makerspace. Congratulations, and thank you for your efforts. All right, that concludes our recognitions.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have comments from the public. And just a reminder, comments must be limited to 3 minutes. The goal is to allow as many people to speak as possible. Speakers are not allowed to relinquish their time to another speaker. Vulgar language or personal abuse against any person will not be allowed. Comments about individual employees or complaints about student problems are not appropriate for the comments from public session. The chairman or presiding officer has the discretion to terminate the presentation if a speaker violates these rules. So we have some folks who've signed up tonight. The first one is Keith Bardo. Yeah, at the podium. Thank you. And if you could just, for the record, just list your name and address.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Keith Bardo, 255 Lodge Trail in Fayetteville. My son was a freshman member of the, again, county championship Stars Mill High School swim team this fall, and I guess, yeah, just finished this spring, this winter rather. And one thing that we noticed at being our first year as swim parents is we'd like to propose, as forming a committee, to look at the possibility of a swim facility within our county. We noticed that the pool complex that we use here at Kedron Pool in Peachtree City, it doesn't really meet the needs to serve all 5 high schools that all have a swim team. And also, I think there's a private school that uses as well as the Southern Crescent Aquatics team, which also use that same facility. We noticed in the course of the swim meets we attended that especially some of the schools on the north side of Atlanta, as well as the Clayton County facility, seem to be very nice facilities for swimming. And with the amount of interest, the amount of teams we have in our county, believe that we would be well served to look at that possibility. I'd be happy to serve in any capacity in helping the county get to that point. Not only would it serve our students who are swimming, but also be another facility. We really only have one, I guess you'd say, public pool in the county that can be used, and it doesn't really meet the current needs. And I think we also end up paying Clayton County to host our county championship each year at their facility over there by the university. So I just wanted to bring that up as a consideration. I don't know if it's been brought up in the past, but recommend that we look into that, and I'll help in any way that I can serve. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine Winter? Hi, if you could just state your name and address for the
Yes.
record.
Catherine Winkter, and I live on Elders Mill Road. And I'm Catherine Winkter. I'm Jonathan Winkter's wife. He teaches at Stars Mill. I'm a mathematics and science teacher tutor for over 30 years. I also prep students for ACT and SAT test. Our students in Fayette County are diverse and have a thirst for learning. They are creative, innovative thinkers. Project Lead the Way is a canned Common Core program, modular program, that is trying to fit round students into a square box. It is very narrowly focused. I know 2 students from other schools who are in the STEM program and will not be taking third-year engineering. My understanding is third year is held off campus at COI and is 2 periods. What a logistical nightmare you have on your hands as you're competing with dual enrollment and work-based learning. Not all of the students can drive or have a parent that can take them to and from. Common Core is pervasive throughout this country. The architect Bill Gates has even said it has failed our children. Governor DeSantis in Florida has signed an order to eliminate all vestiges of Common Core. Governor Kemp says he will do the same thing. We do not need to be embracing more Common Core. We need to be implementing well thought out programs that inspire our children. The research I have done on Project Lead the Way says the major weakness of the program is it does not increase a student's math or science abilities or scores, and they do not fare any better than their peers. It is limited in scope and focuses only on 3 engineering fields. There are well over 200 fields of engineering. Why are we taking the Stars Mill program that works and has the highest enrollment in all the county, numbers don't lie, and replacing it with a program that so far the kids don't like and will not increase their STEM scores? This square box we are trying to fit round students into needs to be open on all sides. The Stars Mill program with the county, compare the Stars Mill program with the county mandate for engineering and technology. The scope of the state is very broad. How does this new program accomplish the state goals? It doesn't fit. This new program doesn't cover ethics, resume building, employability skills, exhibit critical thinking skills and problem-solving skills. Who is going to provide the curriculum to supplement this program? Teachers. That is a lot to ask of teachers. This new program is not a complete program at all. It needs a lot of improvement. As you can see by the reaction here tonight, both students and parents are deeply concerned and looking for answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Bird?
Good evening. I'm Dan Bird, 320 Wood Creek Lane, Fayetteville, Georgia. And I'm here to speak on how I don't like how Project Lead the Way is going to be started at Stars Mill. Currently, the current program, the first year engineering students, they learn the following. They learn resume and interviewing skills that are specific to engineering. They learn about ethics in engineering. And one program that they use is the SketchUp program. And I know that's been very beneficial for my family. My oldest son has used the program to design his Eagle project. And that Eagle project is going to benefit Stars Mill Orchestra. Second and your third year students at the in this current engineering program complete an independent study in the field that they're interested in. There's over 200 engineering fields. They get to stay on campus, which allows them to take an elective such as AP, and they can be part of the Honor Society and National Technical Honor Society. Project Lead the Way, from what I could find, was only associated with Georgia Southern University, not Georgia Tech, not UGA. And it only allows exploration in a few of the disciplines of engineering. It's been used at Rising Star, and I know my middle son took the program and was very disillusioned with it. So he's currently in the program in the high school. If it's used in the high school, he says he'll drop out of it, which would be very unfortunate for him. It does have its limitations, and it'll probably turn away quite a few students. In other schools, the students have to leave the campus on their third year, and if Starrs Mill does that for the engineering students, it takes away from their electives and their AP classes. Project Lead the Way homogenizes the students so they don't have a leg up on their competition for college and or job applications. My proposal is to keep the current program as is, keep it unique to Starrs Mill, and there are other programs at other high schools that are unique to those schools, like automotive at Whitewater and architecture at McIntosh, and then the ROTC programs at Sandy Creek and Fayetteville. I'd like to see perhaps create a fourth-year program for those who wish to go beyond what's currently taught, like an AP program, and to keep personal learning in Starrs Mill High School. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan Winkcher.
Hi, good evening. Jonathan Winkshire, 1467 Elders Mill Road, Sonoy. Thank you for this opportunity to address you tonight. I am the engineering teacher out at Starrs Mill, have been out there for 12 years, created a very successful, innovative program. I'm here tonight looking for answers on behalf of my students and my parents. I have respectfully declined to teach Project Lead the Way since its introduction 4 years ago. I was assured by county administration that no one will ever be telling a teacher what to teach. Now, I've been notified that I must teach this curriculum starting next year, and I'm confused. This is not only telling me what to teach, it's also telling me how to teach it. Ironically, this was the same type of system that I came in 12 years ago to replace because it had suffocated the engineering program. The rationale given for vertical curricular alignment does not outweigh the benefits of the program in this case. Absolute curricular alignment at all costs, I don't think that's the priority. This change is not in the best interest of Starrs Mill students. I do not support this new curriculum, never have, and I feel it's a definite step backwards from what's being provided. Furthermore, a couple other issues. No comparison has ever been done between the new program and my program. No one has ever even asked me to explain what I'm doing out there so successfully. My program is based on the rationale from the state directive on CTAE programs, covering broad interpretation, looking for all the varieties and finding the passions for the students within that 200 disciplines. The new curriculum lacks this differentiation. Starrs Mill program is teaching students to be lifelong learners. I'm preparing them for colleges and careers, developing positive workforce skills. The new curriculum narrows these and only prepares students for the next module. The two programs differ greatly. Educational philosophy is different, the curricular design is completely different, and the student goals are completely different. Secondly, the manner in which the change was enacted, no input from students, from teachers, from parents. I'm getting a forced curriculum, have a contract here, 10 days to sign it or I'm gone. it seems to lack a little of the humanity that we're in charge of bringing to the students in the classroom. Where's the innovation? I have a highly successful program going, costs less than Project Lead the Way, and no one's just being swept away. My question is this the manner in which Fayette County schools are being operated? I see a large disparity between what I'm being told and what I'm seeing in this circumstance. So thank you for your consideration.
Right, thank you. Craig Bardo.
Hi, I'm Craig Bardo, and I'm a freshman at Stars Mill High School. I have been notified by my teacher that this new Project Lead the Way will be enforced next year, and given little to no information about it other than what I've been able to find online. And I would like to say that I do not want to see this project enforced. And my school, I enjoy what I'm doing now. I think it's a very good program. And I just like it, so. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Lauren Worley.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Worley. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Lauren.
I live at 105 Barclay Court, Peachtree City, Georgia. And no, I do not have kids in the school system. I probably don't look like I do. Hopefully not for quite a while now. But Fayette County schools have been my home from kindergarten until I graduated from McIntosh High School in 2014. And after I graduated McIntosh, I went on to UGA, and I now have a bachelor's degree in biological engineering. And I work with a private design firm as a water resources engineer in Atlanta. And I am also here to support the Winkters. I did not have Mr. Winkter as a teacher, but what I've heard from other students as well as his family and students at Stars Mill, I support them. And again, I'm here today because I do not believe that a one-size-fit-all pathway is the future of technology and engineering. And the reason that I don't believe that, especially in this field, is because the field's constantly changing. It's changed in just the year that I've been out of school, and it will continue to change every day over time. And a streamlined pathway does not work for this field. I don't walk into a streamlined job every day. I don't problem solve or make engineering decisions at my current job based off a pathway or a streamlined way of thinking. It comes from everything that I've learned in college as well as high school. We didn't have pathways when I was in high school. But I feel like I'm a very successful engineer because of the things that I learned in school despite having a pathway. And we don't even run computer programs at work using a streamlined way of thinking either. So I don't support this. And I think if I was fortunate enough to have had a teacher in high school who had worked with me with the projects that I was interested in, working on software programs that I was very interested in, allowed me to do my own research for what I might learn in college. I think I would be more successful with the programs that I use now at work every day, whether that's SketchUp, Google SketchUp, who I've heard already commented on tonight. I use that at work very frequently, as well as AutoCAD, Civil 3D, and the Army Corps of Engineers programs. If I had had a teacher like that who had taken an interest in what I really had researched in school, I believe that I would be more successful than I am now as an engineer. And I think we should continue to allow things like that in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt, I'm sorry, Matt Stopner or Stoner?
Hey, yes, I'm Matthew Stogner, 262 Claridge Curve in Peachtree City. I'm also here on behalf of Mr. Winkter and the Stars Mill Engineering program. I am a former student. I graduated from Stars Mill in 2015. I'm now completing my last semester at UGA studying Management Information Systems, Informatics, and Entrepreneurship. And I just wanted to kind of share a little bit of my personal testimony with the class. I actually took it all 4 years while I was at Stars Mill, and thought that I gained tremendous value from the class and the freedom that it brought. I understand that the new curriculum is kind of focused into a few areas, especially civil engineering, which is kind of what you think of when engineering, but actually all the disciplines, it is really confining to the path that students are taking, and I think it would be a disservice to limit the opportunities to such things as civil, physics, the things that you can already get in AP classes, and replacing this flexible program that allowed me to take both AP and dual enrollment classes while I was at Stars Mill, and honestly learn more valuable things than I ever did in those AP classes so far. I am actually just accepted a job on an engineering and operations team at AT&T, and doing software development for them, and Mr. Winter's class was my first exposure to software development. When I was at Stars Mill, there wasn't any computer science classes or things that kind of fit that interest, and if it wasn't for this class, I might not have missed that opportunity to use those skills that aren't taught in this core curriculum. So I really owe it a lot to this class for expanding the horizon of engineering, lots of different disciplines. I keep this on my desk, but it's a 3D printed object that I did in Mr. Winter's class. It's a little chess piece if you can't see, but just always reminding of how cool it is that I got to 3D print something in high school. I love doing that, and people at UGA are always so surprised that there even was an engineering curriculum and that we got to learn actual useful things in high school, which is sometimes hard to find. And just bringing that into college, I've been, set up very well, far ahead of classmates, taking software development classes, and just being very prepared for a great career. And I owed a lot to the engineering program at Stars Mill, which was honestly a really nice, time of the day that was flexible, but also innovative, and it was probably the most exciting part of the day that I can remember in high school is, competing with friends, who can make the best 3D model or who can, design the best bridge and bridge builder. So I just got a lot out of this program and would hate to see it go. Thanks.
Thank you. Brady Meyer.
My name is Brady Meyer. I live at 213 Tiverton Trail in Peachtree City. The Fayette County Board of Education mission statement reads as follows: to forge and equip a community of learners who confidently face challenges, embrace opportunities, and positively impact our world. This statement exemplifies exactly how schools should operate. However, notice a lack of the word curriculum and a clear emphasis on creating a community of learners. This distinction may seem insignificant, but it offers a lens with which to evaluate the current situation in the Stars Mill High School engineering pathway. As the program stands, the mission of the Fayette County Board of Education is achieved in a way not possible through the Project Lead the Way curriculum. Instead of students being pigeonholed into the requirements of Project Lead the Way, we are given the freedom to pursue fields of engineering that interest us and could lead to highly successful careers in the future. Students are given a clear mission at the beginning of the year. Create a plan to learn about your selected branch of engineering, execute said plan, and present what you have learned at the end of the year. Though we write papers along the way to monitor our advancement, success or failure is determined entirely by students. No test to cram for, no pretending to know information, no gaming the system. Students present what they learned at the end of the year, and for the large majority who dedicate themselves to learning about what they love, their hard work shows. Personally, I was able to learn more about rocket science, the calculus behind rocketry, and the future of space travel than any curriculum-based class could possibly offer in high school. I'm not the only individual who benefited from the program, though. One student who is now attending Georgia Tech wrote in to say, I originally learned how to use a 3D printer in Mr. Winter's class, and now, here at Georgia Tech, we 3D print so many things for just about every project that requires something more than a paper. The student goes on that the program and the way it is run is truly special and should be kept at Stars Mill. Another student wrote in saying, I truly believe that it was the program that set me up to find a passion for coding. If it wasn't for Mr. Wincher allowing us to study what sparks a fire in us, I would not be where I am now. Another student recalls, the program gave me opportunities to find valid career paths that I thought I would enjoy and didn't, but also let me find career paths that I was skeptical on and learned that I loved. No other teacher was in a position to do this, and Mr. Wincher is among the best teachers at that school and has impacted many of our lives. Even current students understand the benefits of the class. A current student of Mr. Winkster is learning the Ableton software that professional producers use to make music. He's already been commissioned to make several pieces and will now likely pursue a career in music. Several other students learned Adobe Photoshop and discovered an outlet for creativity that many analytical engineering-minded students do not have. Employers often look for similar skills in potential employees. Yet another student researched car engines for his personal learning plan and is now a significant step ahead of his peers in pursuing a career in automotive engineering. To list every success of Mr. Winkter's class would take longer than I have, but with me I have 256 names of current Stars Mill students who recognize the positive impact of the class on those who complete the pathway. Furthermore, several alumni wrote in upon hearing the news of potential change in the Stars Mill High School engineering program. This is not explicable through their erroneous claims that the class does not benefit students. So the choice to be made is one between curriculum or creating students that are learning how to learn. And if we're truly attempting to create a community of learners as the mission statement of the board presents, then Project Lead the Way is not to do that. And Mr. Winkster's class, as it is clearly the way to do so. Thank you so much for your time.
Right. Thank you. That concludes the public comment section of our meeting. We'll now move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. We have item 8A is our facility update. I'd like for Mr. Satterfield, Mr. Sanders to come up, and as they're coming up, I know you've had an opportunity to see the information that's been presented. Certainly if there are any questions that you might have to answer, I think these gentlemen can take care of that for us, but I want to give a special shout out to these two guys along with Mr. Gray and all of our facility people with their work in helping to prepare our transition to the new facility here at the LEC. I know it's been an overwhelming chore in being able to try to finish this facility, move us over into the facility, and Mr. Farmer is also a part of that transition team with all the technology that's gone into this. I just want to give my personal thanks and appreciation for you and the transition team, Mr. Gray, Mr. Farmer, with these two guys standing before you. It's been a pleasure getting into this project, and I know we still have some more work to do, but I wanted to say that to the group publicly. We appreciate your work, guys, very much.
Thank you. It was truly a team effort. First thing we're going to do is get the light timer adjusted.
That's one of them.
We'll get that taken care of tomorrow.
I was wondering if we needed
Mr. Farmer needs to leave the lights on. Everything was going good, and he go over and touch the lights.
do we need a dedicated dancer to keep the motion?
I think so.
There you go.
Wave your hand.
Yeah. We haven't actually been here when it's been dark, so, I mean, we're having to learn how to do the new lighting system, so I appreciate your patience with us. Any questions with regard to the facility update that's been presented to the board? Mr. Satterfield, Mr. Sanders, any comments that you want to make?
I don't have any.
Things are going well right now, particularly at McIntosh High School with the project we have there. Despite the volumes of rain that we've had, they've managed to stay on schedule, and looking forward to them being completed sometime mid to late May. So that's worked out real good there. We've got, of course, we got our CO from the fire marshal and building department for A and B building here. And we also recently got the COs for the auditorium. So those projects are kind of winding down now. We got 3 or 4 weeks of odds and ends punch list work to do, but we're ready to go do something else.
Okay, we'll be talking about some other things too, so thank you guys, I appreciate that very much.
Thank you, sir.
For our Board of Education, item 8B is the calendar preparation for 2020 and 21, 22. I would want to make you aware, our calendar is already in place for 2019, 2020. But we know that we have parents and students that plan well ahead in advance.
one of the reasons why we haven't pushed this forward was because we understand that the legislature may be addressing this issue as far as calendar start date. I understand that a bill was dropped, I guess, late last week. The reason why we're putting this on the agenda to bring to your attention is that Dr. Turner, Mr. Sweat, they're both going to begin forming a committee and us looking at our calendar and what the potentials may be. As far as I'm concerned, they're really only just a couple of non-negotiables with the calendar. The first thing is that we want to end the semester before the holiday season. That's really important instructionally. We want to have a balanced calendar as much as possible. And, students attend school 180 days, so 90 days first semester, 90 days second semester, or somewhere in that ballpark. Clearly, we can't negatively impact the assessment schedule that the state sets. We don't have any control over that. And we'd like to very much bring in some professional learning time in this next round of calendars. So I've asked Dr. Turner to come up, and I've given my non-negotiables. Dr. Turner, if you've got some things that you want to share. But if the board has any questions about the calendar moving forward, what we have done in the past is we've got a committee together of elementary, middle, and high school. We'll have students and parents also a part of that committee. Dr. Turner, I think I may have stolen a lot of your thunder. I apologize, but anything that you want to share with the board?
No, just much of what Dr. Barrow said. We're only at the beginning of this process. We're not very far into it at all at this time, and we are looking at different ways that we can possibly build in more professional learning time for teachers. Many of the districts around us are already doing what's called digital learning days, so we're going to look at that and try to set some guidelines for that and see if that won't open up some time where teachers have time to do the work that they need to do collaboratively, but the learning still continues for students, and we'll be utilizing technology in our learning management system to host digital learning days if we're able to embed those into the calendar.
Deal. Any questions, comments?
I don't like Julie being so far away. Being so far away.
We'll certainly keep you posted as we move through the calendar and seek your input as we move through. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you try to turn your mic off while he's talking, see if the feedback goes away? Turn mine off and it got down.
Next on the agenda is the board self-assessment. This is the in completion or in order to be able to complete the exemplary board status through the Georgia School Boards Association, and we've given you the link there. I'm making an assumption that the board will want to again do the work that we need to do to maintain that exemplary status. But I put that there for your review and discussion. If you have questions or directions for me, certainly would want to encourage the board to do this again.
Do you know, is this the format we used last year?
I think it's pretty much the same one. They may have tweaked it a little bit. I haven't read the entire thing, but I think it's basically the same format. Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think I've emailed or spoken to everybody about thinking about we need to do a meeting with community stakeholders, so.
That's a part of it.
And I'm just asking each board member to think of, one person you would like to serve on that. So we'll get kind of good representation.
And we need to have this piece done so that that's part of what we share with the community when we come together. That's just one part of it.
So do this first and then get community.
Yeah.
leaders.
Yes, sir.
Last
Okay.
year we had Chamber of Commerce, and I think we had most, if not every high school represented, so, I don't know, but that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I think we'll want to do this again.
good, excellent. I think it's wonderful that we continue to do that, and we'll work with you and support you any way that you need help. I know Kay will, if there's problems with normally what you do is you complete the process and then she brings it together, and we
give you the aggregate report. We'll put everyone's together so you'll have one report with all the feedback put in there.
Is this survey that we're gonna do, is this gonna be online again, or is it by hand? You'll send it to us?
Yeah.
Cool.
Good. Okay, if no other questions there,
Answer the question, I'm sorry.
yes.
You went online?
Kay's gonna send it to you. She'll send you the piece. Next is item 8D, and we're looking at our FY20 staffing allotments. If we could look at the budget timeline there real quick, Kay, if you'll click on that. And what we've got is the we're almost there. There we go, budget timeline. If you'll look there, you can see we're at February 25th at our board meeting, and what we're looking at is initial allocation work for staffing for the FY20 year, and that's why Ms. Robertson's here and ready to share some information with you, at least with some of our initial staffing allocations for next year. So, Aaron, I'll turn it over to you to take it from there.
Evening. As Dr. Vera said, I'm here to present our initial allotment for the 2019-2020 school year. And I do want to say there will be a lot of discussion and decisions that will be made before the allotments are final. These are just the first look, the initial look at our allotments. So I believe you have the information about our allotments, and those of you who have been on the board have heard some of this information before, so I will go through it quickly. But just to remind you, our projected enrollment has been updated based on our current enrollment as of February 5th. So the last time I did the update was February 5th. And right now, our projected enrollments are based on students moving from one grade level to the next. We have not factored in any increase or any decline in enrollment. We did have a meeting with the planning and zoning folks just last week, and we know there are some hot spots where we need to watch, but right now the numbers that you have before you don't have any kind of growth factor added to them or anything like that. As we proceed into the spring, our projected enrollment for next year will become more solid, and we'll continue to monitor it very closely. You will notice as you look through the allotments that I have a note to watch several areas that are likely to need a change, either adding staff or reducing staff. So I have marked areas that are looking a little low or looking a little high so that we can really keep an eye on those. I do want to point out one change in the way I'm showing enrollment this year for our elementary schools and our middle schools. Some of our schools provide special programs for students who are learning an adaptive curriculum based on their IEPs. Those students typically do not participate in the general curriculum for academic classes. So I'm showing those students on a separate line called special programs. So they are still included in the overall enrollment of the school, but I'm not including those students when determining the number of teachers needed at each grade level. Are there any questions about that? Because that's a change. Okay. And the class size limits, just to remind you, are in the bottom right corner of each allotment sheet. For kindergarten, and these have not changed from last year, for kindergarten we have a target of 20. We do have a waiver that allows us to go to 25. For first, second, and third grades, we have a target of 21 with a waiver that allows up to 26. For fourth and fifth grades, we have a target of 28. In middle school and high school, our goal was to have an approximate average of 25 in a class, but we could go higher than that if we wish. We do check enrollment periodically throughout the spring, and honestly, we check it daily during the summer, and we recommend adjustments to staffing as it's needed based on our changing enrollment. In late January, we met with each principal to discuss their staffing allotments for next year. We gave them our recommendations based on their projected enrollment, and we listened to their concerns and their requests. I made a list of all the additional staffing that was requested from the principals, and we will add those requests as they are discussed and as the decision is made to recommend them to you. So none of those additional requests are on the allotment sheets yet, but I have a list of those, and discussions about those will start very soon. So if there are no questions, I'll just point out some things about the elementary schools. In November, the board approved some additional support positions for certain schools, And I'm showing those positions on the allotment sheet with the comment additional support in the far right column. So we do plan to continue that additional support that you approved in November for next year, and I've marked those on the allotment sheet so you can see where those are. As you know, we never quite know what's gonna happen in kindergarten. I base the projection at this point on the number of kindergarten students who are attending the school currently, and then we just watch the enrollment for kindergarten throughout the spring and summer to see what happens there. I am asking for some unassigned teacher and paraprofessional positions. We've done this in the past, and this has worked very well because I don't have to constantly come back to you and ask for additional positions when they're needed. I go to Dr. Barrow. I don't add any allotments to schools without his approval, but that way I can go to him and he can approve them, and I can go ahead and assign them to the schools as we need them. So I am asking for 8 teachers and 8 paraprofessionals that would not be assigned to any school, and they could be used for any level, elementary, middle school, or high school, wherever we need them. Again, they would be used only with the approval of Dr. Barrow and only if they're needed. This past year, we did not use all of the teachers and paraprofessionals that were not assigned. We didn't need them all, so we use them only if we need them. In the elementary schools, in addition to the unassigned positions, we are recommending an overall increase of 1 classroom teacher at elementary. I want to point out something else that's new on the elementary allotment sheets. And the bottom line of the first orange section, you'll see a line titled ECS Lead Teacher. Each school currently has a teacher who serves in the role of what we've called the LEA representative, which basically means that it's a special education educator who's the representative of the district when it comes to students with disabilities. We think LEA representative is a confusing title, so we are proposing changing that title to Exceptional Children's Services Lead Teacher, because they really are the lead teacher in the school. In the middle schools and the high schools, we're able to give these teachers time in their schedule to work on all their additional duties as the lead teacher. But in elementary school, we have found we're not able sometimes to give them that time in their schedule. So many times our lead teacher for Exceptional Children's Services will be teaching a full day schedule, and then they'll have to do all their additional duties during the off hours after school or before school. So what we're proposing is that we show a separate line of ECS lead teachers on the allotment sheet, and each lead teacher will be assigned to 2 schools, and they'll handle all the LEA responsibilities at both of those schools. And we're able to do this with no overall impact on the district allotments by making adjustments in other areas. So we're not really changing what each elementary school has. We're showing it a little differently on the allotment sheet, and those positions will be truly dedicated to being the lead teacher at the elementary school. In addition to the Exceptional Children's Services lead teacher, we're recommending an overall change in the number of special education teachers of 0.5 teacher. So not a lot of change other than that. The Exceptional Children's Services Department is still determining the staffing of paraprofessionals because that is very dependent on students' IEPs. So you'll see on your allotment sheet that that is marked to be determined because we're not quite sure what we're gonna need at each of the schools as far as paraprofessionals. And then as you go on down with the regular education parapros, we base those on the number of classes in kindergarten. There's 1 parapro for each kindergarten class. The number of classes in first grade, we give 1 parapro for every 2 first grade classes. Each elementary school also has a behavior paraprofessional who assists with behavior interventions for students. Schools that have only 1 PE teacher have a paraprofessional in PE to help with the PE classes. And then our largest elementary schools also have an additional paraprofessional to help with their large groups during specials because they do tend to have much larger groups during specials. Any questions about elementary?
Yeah, just one. On sharing the LEAs among 2 schools, I know in the past, and maybe it's changed since I retired, they tried to do all the IEP meetings at one time of the year. If one person is in charge of 2 schools and you always want your LEA in the IEP meetings, Has that been taken into consideration?
It has. Rosie Gwynn is working on the details of that, but they would have a schedule that would give them the flexibility to be able to attend all their IEP meetings, and actually it would be a great benefit. I think they'll actually be easier to schedule because you won't be trying to work around the teacher's teaching schedule. And at the elementary school, it's very difficult to give the LEAs free time during their day to be able to do those meetings. So I think it could actually be a benefit, make the meetings easier to schedule.
Ooh, thank you. I hit the mute button evidently. Any other questions about elementary? It's a good thing I have a big mouth. Okay, middle schools. Middle schools, we recommend an overall increase of 1 teacher in the core academic areas. You'll see on the allotment sheet that we show a reduction of 1 teacher in that gray area, but I want to explain that because that's actually because one of our middle schools last year used a classroom teacher position as a connections allotment due to an anticipated mid-year retirement. So we had a teacher who we knew would be retiring in mid-year. Rather than using that teacher in a classroom position, the principal chose to make that class a connections class because she thought it would be less disruptive for the students. So we're shifting that allotment back to a classroom teaching position for this year. So it looks like we're losing an allotment there, but really we're not. We're just shifting it back to a classroom position. We're also shifting 1 health and PE allotment from 1 school to another where it's needed. It's a position that's actually going to be vacant at the end of the year, so there's no person attached to it, and the school who's receiving the allotment will have the flexibility to use it to meet the needs of their school. And we're recommending increasing the special education teacher allotment by 0.5 teachers. The special education paraprofessionals, as I said earlier, are still being determined, and we have no recommended change in the number of regular education paraprofessionals. Any questions about middle school? Okay, then on to high school. There are 2 separate sheets showing the totals for high school. I like to do one that's for high schools only, and then one that's for high schools plus our programs. So there's 1 totals sheet for high schools, and then one that includes alternative school, open campus, mainstay, reach, and project search, all those additional programs that we have. We are recommending that 4 of our high schools reduce 1 teacher allotment, and the high schools are going to have the autonomy to decide where that allotment will be reduced. Even with reducing that allotment, when you look at the average class size, our average class size still stays below that target of 25 students in a class. You'll see on one of our high schools that we are phasing out a pathway. We actually started this last year with our automotive program at Sandy Creek, and this year we'll be completely phasing out that pathway to start a new pathway at Sandy Creek. There are some additional requests from principals that are being discussed, so we will be talking about those, and as those come before you for approval, I'll be adding those to the allotment sheets. And we're recommending adding 3.5 special education teachers at the high school level. Again, special education paraprofessionals are to be determined. We are adding a 50% custodian at one of our high schools due to their addition. As you know, we had a high school that completed an addition recently, and we've already allowed them to hire another 50% custodian. So we're doing it for McIntosh High School as well, since their addition will be complete. Questions about the high schools?
Yeah, this is a side kind of rabbit trail, but is there not enough demand for the automotive at Sandy Creek, or?
I don't know that I'm the best person to answer that question since I don't know the details of the curriculum at Sandy Creek, but I do know that that we felt that adding a program that focused more on film and video would benefit the students there at Sandy Creek, so they're actually renovating that space in order to add that program.
My car's been at the mechanic for a week because they can't get help.
The enrollment there had declined significantly, and that's part of the reason for the shift.
Aaron, did you say 4 high schools or 3?
4 of the high schools. We're asking to reduce a teacher. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, because when I look at at least the chart in here, I saw Fayette County and McIntosh were gaining on certified, but I might be reading it wrong.
If you look at the top part, the blue area, that's where their core academic teachers are, and you'll see it there. Yes, you'll see it there. The summary takes into account their special education teachers, all the certified staff.
Got it.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. We appreciate the update, and certainly we'll continue to monitor that.
as we move through and review principal input and continue to watch our enrollment numbers. Next on our agenda is the discussion with J.C. Booth Middle School. I know that we have had this as part of our discussion for the last several meetings, and a couple of things that the board had asked for. I know you'd asked for an inventory of all of our properties. We've provided that for the board. We also gave you our best estimates right now for the cost of whichever model we chose, and there are 5 of those. And Kay, if you'll wait a second, hang on. I skipped over Tyrone. I'm sorry, I had jumped right ahead. I was looking around. I said, nobody's looking at the same thing I'm looking at. I apologize. Let me back up. You see the letter that we received from Mayor Dial in the town of Tyrone. They actually approved last week that they're going to move forward with the designing and the implementation of the sewer down into Tyrone proper. This is one of the issues that we've been addressing. Actually, the board addressed this when the elementary school closed. The numbers were one of our issues, but probably the real critical issue with the closure of that school actually happened to deal with the fact that our septic systems were failing. And we had 2 systems there. One had actually already failed, and the one was on its last leg. So with the sewer coming to Tyrone, that certainly gives the board an opportunity to consider the possibility of renovating that site, connecting it to the sewer, and then being able to possibly reopen that school in the future. So thought this was good news, and I know that Tyrone's excited about the possibility. I know I actually talked with Mayor Dial today, and they wanted the board to be aware that this was moving forward. I know that we can't make any decisions currently because we have some other things we have to do first, but felt like this was good news that we received from Tyrone. Any comments or questions there? We continue right now to have a couple of groups that are leasing the building as it currently stands, and we're happy for those individuals to continue to be there until a determination is made that we want to try to move forward with renovations or some other plan. So I just wanted you to be aware. Any questions or concerns about Tyrone?
I got a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
3 questions. What's the approximate capacity? How many students can we put at Tyrone as it is?
I
Does anybody
think
know that?
we were looking at about 400 was what we had to have there, or that was there currently. What we would recommend is making it at least a base size school. I would prefer to try to.
That was my next question. What's the base size school?
450.
We get a principal funded from the state at 450?
Yes, sir.
I thought it was higher than that.
What we'd like to do though is have it at least 550. That's what we'd want to shoot for.
And
You
my
know,
next
we.
question was, do we have space to do that?
Yeah, and we do have roughly 8 acres. It would be tight, but we feel like we can get enough in there, depending upon the design. If you recall, we had several mobile units out there. Those have been removed because they were in really bad shape, but you know, we haven't done any kind of design work on that, but we'd like to have at least 550 to be able to attend the school, because we need for it to be at least a base size school if we were going to consider that.
What's the size of our standard elementary school that we would build? The last several schools we've built, how big are they?
Gosh, that varies. We have, I think our largest currently is Mentor, and it's around 760. I know Inman is getting close to that. Mike, you want to provide some feedback there on some of the numbers? Why don't you stay a little closer? How about that? Yeah.
I thought we had to have about 700 kids to fund one principal in elementary.
The base size school is 450.
Okay.
What was the size?
Yeah, those large prototype elementaries like Crabapple, Cleveland, Mentor, they'll bump up in the 700 range.
Yeah.
I know Mentor is in the 700 range now, and that's a little tight. Usually about 675, 680, somewhere in there is about our capacity because of all the various programs we have. With regards to Tyrone, it did, when it closed, had about 400 kids in it, but we were actually losing money operating it at that level, and I think our desire is to put a additional maybe 5 or 6 classrooms and bump it up to about 550, somewhere in that range, and that's doable. Those large footprint schools, we can push up around 700.
Yeah.
And that's been, I think, the history of our school district. We've tried to keep our elementary schools relatively small. There are elementary schools that have 1,200, 1,500 kids in it, and that's just, in my personal opinion, professional opinion, that you don't get to know the kids that way. And
The principal?
Sir?
The teacher's getting into kids. But you said
Well,
the principal didn't get into
true, but there's, if that philosophy is going to shift, we can accommodate a whole lot more by putting more kids in the individual classrooms and changing the class size. And that's been something this board has, for a very long time, has said, no, we don't want to do that.
Well, that's the reason I was asking, because it seems to me the last several schools we've built have been pretty big schools. And it seemed to me we're moving away from the small school philosophy. And I don't know if that's.
I would not want to. I can put it that way. I'll do what the board directs us to do, but I think, I don't want us to get any bigger than where we are right now, and that's about 750. I think it's, if you can afford to do it, and that's a focus of a community, and I think that's what our focus has been, the smaller is better.
Or more expensive.
Okay. So I know we've talked about Tyrone here just a little bit. Do you have any other questions about that?
About the sewer specifically, or
Yeah,
about
yes, sir.
reopening?
Yeah, I mean, I'm.
On the next line item, I have a lot of questions. But,
Okay, sure, absolutely. Okay.
Anyone else?
Okay, moving on then to the J.C. Booth Middle School discussion, and I apologize, I jumped ahead of that. We've given you basically 5 different options for you to consider, option 1 through 5. And you can see at the very top, we've got one with a new middle school, new elementary school, new middle school, and both new middle and elementary school. And, these are projected numbers of what it would cost us. It's projected numbers on what we would get for capital outlay dollars from the state and what we would have to pay for out of either our eSPLOST or our general fund budget. We've tried to put that and give you feedback about the size, the pros and the cons. Certainly, we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. I can give you my opinion, but I thought maybe we could just put this out on the table and I could hear some discussion here first.
So I guess one of the questions I had was regarding renovating Booth. If I look at some of the other projects I've seen, and I don't know if we have this data or maybe we could pull it together, Mike, what's our history in terms of being on budget for renovation? Like, for instance, LEC would be a good project to look at, or any of the other massive renovations maybe we've done. I guess in my mind, the question I'm asking myself is, are we more apt to stay on budget on a new than we are on a renovation? And it's a question, I don't know.
I think over the years, traditionally, we've stayed pretty much on budget, irregardless of whether it was new construction or renovation. It's all about getting good estimates and a good design where you don't have a lot of change orders, things of that nature. Because you definitely, if you got a poor design, you can end up spending some extra money. But we, with either one of our architectural firms that we've utilized over the years, we've had very few change orders. So we've been able to stay pretty close to the budget. Usually if the budget you know, increases, it's usually because of us increasing the scope. And, you know, and adding additional work on, or, you know, like for instance, in the last, couple years, the market, we've seen about a 25 to 30% increase in the market, over what, the numbers that we used, when we did our last 5-year facility plan update.
And that's because of, material cost and labor costs have gone up significantly.
Right. And I couldn't put an exact figure on it, but I'm sure the tariffs on steel and aluminum have helped push the costs up a little bit. And then, labor prices have been going up, and, you know, the costs of insurance and just
Yep.
overhead costs have definitely gone up.
But that's not just for us, that's everywhere.
But I don't believe we're gonna miss it, you know, if we come up with a 30 million budget or 40 million, which we're gonna stay pretty close to that.
And I have a question along those lines, and you might have just answered it, but when East Plus 3, before it was passed and the presentation was made, it was $5 million to renovate Tyrone, but the last thing I saw was $7 million. So we're 18 months later, it went up by $2 million.
Yeah.
Is because of all the things you're
Part
talking
of
about?
that is change in scope. We decided to add an addition, to bump it up larger. And we also tried to put a little money in there for anticipating the sewer. And that could well be $300,000 or $400,000 of our costs, because they, at least in the meetings that Mr. Sanders and I attended, from what we gathered, they weren't gonna run the sewer right in front of the school. We were gonna have to run a leg down into the center of town to pick up. So there would be some cost for us there.
But not unreasonable, I don't think. In fact, the last conversation I had with Mayor Dial and the engineering firm that they've done, Mike, and you haven't been a part of that. This has just been in the last day or so, but I think the number's gotten a little bit better on the cost of the sewer, but there will be some cost for the sewer, no question.
Well, it was only, I would say, 12 to 16 months ago, we were hearing numbers in the 160, 175 range for new construction all over the state. And now we're hearing numbers, 200, 220. You know, and a high school might run 225 a square foot. So there's been a good little 25 to 30% bump in the last 16, 18 months.
But Mike, back to Mr. Rabel's question, that the $5 million estimate was just a renovation of Tyrone at that time, right? It wasn't the
It
addition.
said renovation of modernization on the
Yeah,
street.
that's it. Yeah, it said it didn't include the addition.
It's kind of like LEC when we first started talking.
Change of
The
scope.
change of scope on the LEC resulted in the price going up.
Yeah.
At first, I was like, did it triple? But we actually changed, what we wanted to do. So, Mike, in terms of location, is Tyrone the right spot where, based on demand, that we need that physical infrastructure, that building,
Well,
regardless of the cost right now?
Yeah, we've got some moderate growth in the Tyrone area, along Dogwood, and there's some projected growth in some other areas. And we just this past week had a meeting with all the planning and zoning folks, so we got some pretty current numbers there. But the big issue for us is the West Village and Peachtree City in that geographical area. That area is growing pretty good. We've the entire area where the single-family homes will be built, there's about 2,000 homes all total, but about 600 or 700 of them are going to be single families that may produce children for us. The rest of them are like 55 and older, so we really shouldn't be impacted by those that much. But those 600 or 700 homes are all zoned for Kedron.
Well, I was over there a day or two ago, and I know the first phase, I remember when we talked last year, of Everton, right? Everton is McIntosh, Kedron, Booth? The first phase on the right adjacent to Centennial?
On the east side of McDuff
On the,
Parkway.
the
That's
east
right.
side. So that next phase looks like it was recently cut past that.
Still on the east side.
Still on the east side, it's a giant area. So that where would that be zoned?
That's, that would be Kedron Elementary, but the board at that time made the decision that would go Flat Rock, Sandy Creek.
Okay.
On the east side.
That
So
original piece that you're mentioning, Mr. Anderson, that's the only piece of that West Village up through there that goes to Booth McIntosh.
The
That
Everton
very
phase
first
one.
phase
Okay.
one, yes,
And
sir.
all that additional stuff, even if it goes to Kedron, would currently
Yes,
right
sir.
now. Okay.
That's correct.
But everything on the west side of McDuff goes Kedron, Flat Rock, Sandy Creek.
But isn't the lion's share of the west side the 55 plus community? The I don't know the name of it, but you know the Crestwind.
Yeah, it's
Crestwood?
drawn somewhere right in that area, but it's that 500 to 600 single-family
On the west
homes
side.
that is going to provide the big impact. We would anticipate somewhere in the 500 to 600 new students that are currently zoned
Sure.
for Kedron, and Kedron's just about full. Kedron is not one of our large footprint schools. We never put an addition on it like we have at Spring Hill and Peoples. And so there would be no way they could handle that kind of growth. And so,
Crabapple handle it.
without getting too deep in the woods on attendance lines, you know what, if, as Dr. Bear had said, we could reopen Tyrone, if we could shift students from Crabapple that live in the Tyrone area back to Tyrone Elementary, and then make an adjustment where we send some students from current students at Kedron to Crabapple. And there's 3 or 4 subdivisions there that are actually closer to Crabapple than they are Kedron, but they're at Kedron because historically they had been there. But if we could make that shift, then we can open up enough space between Kedron and Peachtree City Elementary that the 2 of those schools should be able to handle that growth over the next 4 or 5 years. With the addition that we put on at Peachtree City and the additional classrooms that we constructed out of the old media center, we could probably handle about at least 100 more students at Peachtree City Elementary. So if we could
Call it 600 at Peachtree City, maybe?
yeah,
What is it, high fours right now?
Yeah, probably 6 would be about the max. But between Peachtree City and if we make that shift at Kedron, we should be able to handle 500 or 600 kids. But that's the area that we're need help the most. And pretty much the meeting that we had last week verified that with the.
Is the current staff thinking is that we're gonna need another elementary school around 2 years from now?
Yeah, it's, I think we'll have to get by with what we got for about that, cause it's gonna take that
Right,
long
right.
to draw plans, bid stuff out and actually do the work.
You know, probably, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the best case scenario would be 2020. If that would be the very best case. If we were to open,
The 2021 school year.
Yeah, the fall of 2020.
yeah, fall of
Right.
2020. That's what I'm talking about.
That
yes.
would be the best
That
scenario
best
that
case
we
scenario.
could.
And where our thinking is with that, you know, to construct a new elementary school, we're probably talking 18 million roughly.
Yeah.
So we think we're getting a better value in spending the 5, 6, 7 million in renovating and updating Tyrone. So we're saving money as opposed to building a
But-
brand new elementary school.
Plus, the school would be in the center of the attendance zone.
Right.
You know, right now, Crabapple's on the far southern end of that attendance zone. If we reopen the old Tyrone Elementary, we're basically almost in the dead center of that attendance area.
It would help in a number of ways, transportation being one of them as well.
Yep.
Because we're transporting from Tyrone all the way down to
Yeah.
Peachtree City,
Crabapple.
to Crabapple Lane. So that would
And we
definitely
could,
help there.
we could also get, and Roxanne and I had this discussion, that if we reopen Tyrone, there's also a lot of students that are now crossing on buses, railroad tracks, that we could minimize some of that too. We could
Brian?
reduce that.
Brian, did you have any other questions about Booth or?
I had another question about Booth, but Mike, not for you, but for Tom. In terms of the value of the asset on the books, if we do the renovation project for Booth versus we build a new booth, is there any, from an accounting standpoint, is that, you know what I mean, as we recognize the value of that physical structure, is there any change versus a renovated versus the new construction versus, you know, lifetime value of the building, things like that? I'm just trying to understand if that needs to come into play at all.
Well, it would increase the value based on the improvements of the lifetime of the asset. So we would book that as an improvement. What is really different in, you know, governmental accounting is that true depreciation cost capture over the lifetime of the asset. It only comes into play basically when, you know, we make that one statement each year for the financial purposes. So it doesn't have the same accounting effect that you might have in a business where it's affecting profit and loss each year. It's just really more of a reporting factor long-term. But it would increase the value of the asset overall, yes.
You're saying the renovation would, but would it, I guess I'd be curious, the difference in valuation of the renovated booth versus the quote-unquote new booth. And I guess beyond that, the value of the, assuming we, you know, looking at the options, and I've been looking at number one, it's attractive, and option two, you know, with the new middle school, assuming we did the second option, does that value of the old booth, I've heard 11 or 12 million thrown around, is that right?
That's correct. We had a real estate valuation done, I guess, 6 months ago, Mike? 6 to 8 months ago? We had
I think I can shed light on where Mr. Anderson's going on there. I would say if you come in and put a new coat of paint and put floor covering
No,
down,
and I understand that.
You really aren't increasing the value of the property. But out of that projected 30 million that we were calling a renovation, but about 20 of that is going to new construction. We're talking about a sizable, you know, all the classroom, the new front office, the new gym. There's a sizable addition that would increase the value of that property significantly. I think you're absolutely right. I know what the point you're trying to make.
Well, no, I'm asking, no point yet. The reason what I was going to ask is if the value of the existing booth, let's just say it's 12 million, right? Shouldn't option two show that we have a $12 million asset, so it's more of an apples comparison? Because right now, when I look at it, I, you know, especially not having talked about this for 2 years like we all have, option one looks really attractive, yet really option two is, we're talking 31 versus 29, aren't we?
Well,
is that right with the asset, or is that a fair way to portray it?
Well, I think the point that you make, and that's the reason why I said I'd share my opinion with regard to where we feel like we might need to go. And you look at the 5 options, this is just Jody's personal opinion, I like option 1 and option 2. If we narrow from 5 to 2,
sure,
1 and 2 would be the ones that I think make the most sense to me. Part of the reason why you say, well, why not 1 hands down? Well, when you look at what you're talking about with Booth being a $12 million option, you put that $12 million on that 29 and you've got roughly 41. So you're looking at a difference between, you know, 41 and 43, basically. And you've got a brand new middle school and you've got a renovated Tyrone. So is the difference there? Does that make sense?
See, that helps me a lot. I would just ask that maybe for everybody that hasn't been following this, I would add that to the spreadsheet because I think that gives more context to, I agree with you. I've been debating 1 and 2, but knowing that 12 really does weigh now, you know, on me.
Well, you know, and that's part of the conversation. We don't want to take any of our useful facilities and just say, okay, those are no longer an asset. They are. And I look at this facility right now, you can tell we've spent some money on it, but now we've got, purposefully, we've got all of our central services in one place. Makes sense. We couldn't have built what we, or put our people in for what we spent. So, you know, I think you have to look at, okay, where do we want to go? Are we playing the short game or the longer game? And which is going to be the best? Now, there's pros and cons on both sides. There really are. And that's what I think the board's got to get their head around and what they feel most comfortable with.
Yes, so to Brian's point, I think we either need to show in option 2 and 5 that we can sell a $12 million asset, or 1, 3, and 4 show that we're foregoing a $12 million opportunity cost. So I think that would kind of bring back, that'd be apples to apples to me. Because none of these options show that we have a $12 million asset that's, or not.
Well, I think it's easy enough to pull the 12 million over into option 1. If you want to count that as an option, and we don't.
Yeah, 1, 3, and 4.
Yeah, we don't know what the ultimate use would be for that facility. It could be sold, it could be repurposed for things that we need to use as a district, and we got to figure out what we're going to do.
But
if
you need
we're
to
gonna
account
build.
for it.
Yeah,
if it's
we can
part of
account
this
for that.
decision-making
That's not a
process.
problem.
I mean, Leonard, any questions or comments?
I mean, I don't really have anything particular to add at this point. I think, you know, we've talked around a lot of these issues before. I think, you know, the whole idea of trying to build a whole nother elementary school on a unknown site, on a site that, I mean, and given the need that we have, I'm not sure that makes sense. I like the idea of reopening Tyrone. I think it solves some of the redistricting issues on the west side. I think it does. You know, I think it's good for that community. And so, you know, my initial reaction to all of this is probably option 2 when we're going through all of it. But if we're trying to narrow it down in some fashion, then certainly those first 2 options are more preferable. You know, we haven't talked about all of the problems we might get with renovating booth on site and the logistical issues and things like that. I think long-term, having the elementary school, the middle school closer to the high school, when we look at future redistricting needs, is going to make drawing those boundaries easier because the schools will be closer together. And, you know, I think we've talked for a long time about how booth facilities are inadequate and we needed to do something, so.
Roy?
No, I'm 1 and 2 is what I'm looking at, and,
Yeah,
you know,
1 and 2 for
trying to
me
weigh
also.
the pros and cons.
Okay.
I mean, my take is I kind of favor option 2 because I just don't, looking at it at a 30-year time frame, I like the flexibility of option 2. We have a new facility, which will be very nice. It'll be more cost efficient. We have another building and an asset that we can do something with that gives us some flexibility over the next couple of decades. And it seems financially like it's, when you add it all up, it's pretty close. I also support, if we need a new elementary school, I'd rather reopen Tyrone than build a new one. I think it helps. I just think we're underselling the disruption that renovating Booth would cause for 2.5 years. I just think that would be really difficult. And I just think that based on all this, it makes sense to build a new middle school and renovate Tyrone. But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% on 1 or 2, and taking into account the $12 million, it's easy for me to lean towards number 2 as well. I'd like to talk to Tom a little more, but I'm in a similar spot as Dr. Barrow.
Well, were you trying to get Dr. Barrow, trying to get a sense tonight of whether it was worth pursuing renovating Booth, because we have to start?
Well, as Mr. Satterfield said, we're at a point where we're completing projects, and if, we need a little more direction on, okay, once this project is done, where do we want to go within the scope of the 5-year facility plan? The next project on the list was Booth, and we're trying to get clarification on where we want to go with that. You know, we've got a lot of factors pushing from different places, and we're trying to make the best sound decision, make the best judgment here based on what we currently know. It would help us, number one, is if 3, 4, and 5 are no longer options, let's go ahead and take those off the table.
Okay.
And we'll focus more on option 1 and 2. You know, we can adjust the spreadsheet and put the $12 million asset in so that we can look at it. Now, if it's going to be used, but depending upon what it would be used for, we're going to have to spend some money there. I mean, y'all ultimately know that. But we know that it was appraised at that amount. And, you know, that gets us kind of, okay, what do we want to do? We can make either or both, you know, one or the other happen. I'm confident in our folks and our ability to do that. I do feel that option 1 and 2 are our best 2 options of the 5.
Well, I just kind of hear from board members, not a vote, but.
Yeah, I want to join the meeting with Brian and Tom and get some questions answered about option 4 and 2 and sunk costs and opportunity costs.
We can't hear you in the microphone.
I'd just like to join the meeting with Brian and Tom and just get some questions answered about some opportunity costs that we're maybe not accounting for. And with option 4, we've got a really big elementary school.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I totally understand the ramifications of that, so I got a lot of questions I'd like to ask at a.
We certainly
time
want to
before the next
answer the
meeting.
board's questions. I mean, you know, I think we've got really pretty, as good as numbers as we can get for you right now without actually building specs and putting things out to bid. I think we can make it tighter and better once we.
So in option 3, you say new elementary school. What does that mean? Just build a new school somewhere?
Yes, sir.
I don't want to do that. We've I think we've got enough facilities.
And I would agree.
So does,
And option 5 is also building a new elementary school, but we don't necessarily.
That's both new middle and elementary.
Yeah. I can tell you I wouldn't favor 3 or 5, just right off the bat.
Sure.
But I mean, I guess I'm just trying to, are there any board members who are in favor of renovating Booth and not building a new middle school?
I'm in favor right now 2, 1, 4 in order. However, I do want to understand just from a cost standpoint with Tom, the 12 million and just the value of that asset and things like that. But my preference, at least right now, based on the spreadsheet and everything, is number 2.
Okay. Roy?
2
Roy's
is
2.
my preference.
And 2's mine as well.
Okay.
And I think Leonard I think that was a 2, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think 2 is, from the long-term standpoint, it's the better option. It gives us a building and booth that we can use. I know we've talked about West Village stuff. We haven't really talked about all the potential development here in Fayetteville, behind our old building, down by Ingalls, and, you know, the possible need for, you know, a school here and maybe repurposing what we have the COI at back to an elementary school.
Right.
And this would give us that flexibility. I know, you know, a lot of our secondary partners are chomping at the bit in terms of being able to lease more space to help our dual enrollment students, and, you know, Booth might be a great facility to house some of that in as well. So I think, option 2 would be my preference.
Okay, Mike, when was Inman built? Inman, when was that Inman built?
Inman's, I want to say, it's about 14 years old,
All right.
somewhere in that
I was just
neighborhood.
looking at attendance numbers, and 2006 was the high water mark.
Yeah.
Was Inman around? I think we had Inman then.
Yeah.
Can there, if we scroll down, there's a number at the bottom, students impacted, or is that on the other sheet that
No,
only
it's-
we can see?
It's near the bottom.
Yeah, and so, if you could speak, I know option 4 there has a lot higher number, which makes it a little bit less preferable, but I didn't know how those numbers were come up with.
With option 4, and we've looked at this a good bit, but with option 4, you're basically changing Booth into an elementary school. All right, which is right in the middle of Huddleston's district.
Oh, wow.
So if you do
Right on
that,
top of each other.
at least this is my thoughts. Now, I'm just one person. But if you do that, it would seem reasonable that you got to at least probably carve out about 200 of the kids that would live right in the close proximity of Booth Elementary School to go to Booth Elementary. So you're taking 200 away from Huddleston. So then you got to go get some kids to put into Huddleston. So you take a couple hundred out of Oak Grove, then you got to go to Braylon, then you got to go to, it's a domino effect. And when it's all said and done, instead of, the first 3 options, you're basically messing with about 1,000 students on rezoning. 4, you're in the 2,000 range. You're redrawing the entire attendance zones for all of Peachtree City and Tyrone.
And Mike, in a big portion of that 1,000 are kids that are going back to where they would have been going to school.
Probably about 400 of them
400
would be
or so.
going back. Two things I need to point out. One, and this is back to Brian's question earlier, and I know exactly what you're talking about here, and the $12 million value of the existing building is not in here anywhere. All right, look, just for sake of argument, if you said, all right, we go with option 2, and when we make the move, we sell Booth for $12 million. Well, when you do that, you've basically 1 and 2 are pretty much.
That was my point.
They're
That was my
identical. Basically, there's hardly no change in the money there at all. The difference comes is if you keep it, because you haven't renovated Booth yet.
Well, even if you keep it, you need to consider the opportunity cost. I
Yeah.
think. Yes.
But I
So-
mean, down the road, it could be, a COI, it could be part, college could use it. But I just want you to realize that when you make that comparison at the end of the day, we haven't renovated the existing booth if you go with 2. One thing that's real important that we need to have a clear understanding is that option number 1, the renovation of Booth, that's a solid 26, 27-month long job. 'Cause it's done in 3 major phases, and we got to be rolling come June 1st, we got to be grading the football field down. That dirt has got to be graded down and moved to the back of the school in June and July, and so that you're not disrupting school when it comes back and then you start construction. We can actually build the new middle school much quicker than we can renovate, but you're probably talking 18, 19 months from when you break ground to build a new one. It's a solid 26, 27 months to renovate the existing facility, because there's so much phasing
Stages
that has
you
to
gotta
go
move
on.
in.
You go out and you build a new construction the first year, and then the second summer, you're tying in what we
Right.
call the Great Hall. That's when you're making the connection and doing the work in the old gym to make it the cafeteria. And then you've got to come back later on and do the pod. So it's a lot longer.
Are there any other questions?
Something you just said, if I heard it correctly though, if we go option number 2 and build a new middle school, and then we want to use Tyrone for something else, now we have to go in and Booth, we have to renovate it. So that's another expense then, right? So that would be added to option 2.
Well, if
Am I missing something here?
Well, only if we had a need today for it.
Well,
Option two.
let's say, for example, we decide, if we go with option 2 and decide to make Booth the new COI, do we have to put
Yes.
$5 or $7 million into
Right,
renovating that?
absolutely.
Which would add $5 or $7 million to option 2.
Correct, but
Yeah.
under that same guise, you would have to add to option 1. If we needed to create a new COI, you'd have to add a number to that too. That was my point on the spreadsheet, showing that 12 somehow.
Okay.
Because I agree with you completely. But I think Scott said something earlier that I hadn't thought totally about, and it makes a lot of sense, is in a 5-year plan, option 1's a no-brainer. But when you look at it for 30 or 40 years, option 2 starts to get a lot more attractive, especially with the 12 million in play. I mean, and that's where my head was.
Right, and if you're just coming in, say if you're gonna do a COI, or bringing up, I mean, you're talking more painting, floor covering, maybe put a roof on. We're not having to build a new gym. We're not having to relocate the cafeteria and the kitchen. So a lot of those big expenses that are in option 1 for renovating Booth is because we've outgrown the infrastructure. And you wouldn't have those costs associated, with changing it into something else.
We're not talking 5 to 7 million that we're talking
Right,
about.
right.
less.
You're not talking 30. You're more like 5, 6 million could go in and do all the renovation, but you get no help from the state because in option 2, we would take the existing booth out of inventory.
I want to comment on Roy's question. For this decision, I think it's appropriate to put a $12 million on Booth and say that's a $12 million asset that we could sell, might or might not, but it's something we could. So it's an asset that is available that should be subtracted from option 2. Now, if we choose to use Booth for the COI, that should be part of our decision-making process when we, if we choose to open up FIS's elementary school, we need to add $7 or $8 million to that decision.
That makes sense.
So I think those are 2 independent projects that we're conflating a little bit.
We are efficient with our electricity and
Yeah.
very impressive.
That's
sure
an
everybody
energy conversation.
Okay.
LED lighting, yeah.
Anything else?
All right,
Scott,
so
oh,
basically
sorry.
what I'm hearing that we need to do for the board is to shrink this list. We're gonna have some independent conversations about option 4, because I wanna make sure you feel comfortable in your own mind about the financing of it. But what I'm hearing is that we wanna come back to option 1 and 2, build in the $12 million into the equation there. And then do we think we'll be ready to, I wanna try to keep us on track, because the later we delay making some decisions as far as design, and communicating conversations with the facility department of the DOE, all those pieces have to fall into play. So I'm trying to not push you, but I wanna make sure we're using, our time wisely and that we get things ready to go, because we don't wanna, if we could get to a point where there's a natural break, particularly at the beginning of school, my second choice would maybe be during the middle of the semester, but I'd prefer to open school at the beginning of school. That works just so much better for everybody. And I don't know how long it would take to actually build the design.
When's our next meeting?
The 11th, March 11th.
March 11th. I'd be comfortable having an action item on the 11th.
Me too.
Okay, y'all are all right with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and clearly, if anything else comes up, please do let us know, and we want to be transparent, All the discussions about this is happening, you know, it can be listened to on the podcast, people can come, they're welcome to come. We encourage that so that they can hear the conversation, because I know it's, our board is working really hard to get informed and make the best decision possible. So, we'll work to have an action item on the March 11th board meeting date.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
All right, move on then to the last item is, item 8G, and we, got Miss Melinda Berry Dreisbach. She's come back and taken our feedback from, our board meeting, our last board meeting, and we've actually, built out, a new proposal on the school logo. So Melinda, if you will come up, and much of the rationale is very similar, but there are some shifts in the actual design. So Melinda, share the highlights of this, and we'll talk to the board about it.
Okay. Well, one thing that's very noticeable in this new design is that it is a monochromatic design, and we're using the traditional blue of the Fayette County school system, which has been in use, we know, since at least 1982. And we want to carry as much of the old logo into the new as we can, but just make it updated to represent who we are now. As we've said before, the one we have currently has represented us well in the past with our traditional education, but now that we've combined traditional education with more progressive and creative ways of learning, we feel that there is a need to update and modernize the logo. So what we have today is a modernized take on a cauldron and a flame. And up at the top, we have a modernized diamond that is representative of the flame. And as we work our way around, if we look to the right-hand side, we actually have two diamonds that are coming together, and this is representing your elementary school grades, because we have more grade levels at the elementary school than we do at middle and high. And as you work your way around clockwise, we go to the middle school and the high school. The dark blue within the diamonds represents our traditional core programs. The light blue represents our creative programs that we have in place, where students can customize their learning to their needs and their interests. The bottom part represents the cauldron, so we have two very strong rectangles, and in the center of that, we have our iconic blue diamond making up the base, which is the stability and the strength of our school system, and it's in our Fayette County blue, the dark blue. We kept the typography the same, so we have Fayette County Public Schools in the sans serif type, which is a very bold, strong type representing the strength of our school system, and we kept the tagline in the serif type, which indicates excellence and creativity. In this logo, we actually put our word mark in the logo, so it is part of the logo now, so Fayette County Public Schools will always be there in the logo. And I think that's probably our big highlights and changes from what we had before. So I hope that's addressed some of the concerns that people had with the previous logo.
Good deal. Any questions about the design? Any comments? Any feedback? I know I haven't really had a chance to talk with many of you about this, so give us what you think. I know.
I'm good with it.
Okay.
I like it.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I think it's good.
I will share with you that Melinda, at my request, we pushed this back out to our administrative council. I think there was 52 individuals, administrative council, and of the 52, 50 said that they felt like it was a good shift. They supported it. Only had 2 people who said they did not. So with that, I felt comfortable in bringing this back to the board. We'd like to recommend it to you in the action item, but I wanted to have some discussion first and see if there was anything else that you, any other comments that we needed to make.
I think we're all good.
We're good? All right, then.
Thank you.
That completes the superintendent's report, Mr. Hollowell. We can
Move on to personnel.
move on to personnel. We do have our reelection list for FY '20. These are all of our certified staff. We want to make the clarification or the stipulation that these individuals are going to be offered a contract. It does not necessarily mean they will be at the same site. We want to hold that. The contract is with the school district, not the individual site, because we may have issues, as Ms. Robinson discussed, with regard to enrollment shifts or personnel needs in other places. So we reserve that right, but I certainly want to recommend the reelection list, and we'd also like to recommend the personnel list. There's a number of retirements, resignations, reclassifications, elections, and separations. I do want to specifically mention that we have a retirement of our principal at Rising Star Middle School, Ms. Nancy Blair, and we also have a resignation because of families moving with our Braylon Elementary principal, Ms. Jennifer Couch. So those are the two highlights in the personnel report that I wanted to mention. With that, I'd recommend to the board that our personnel list be approved.
So move.
Second.
All in favor? 5-0.
Our financial reports, Mr. Gray. I know you want to share some good news with us.
I get to take the long route out of the penalty box there. All right, so we'll start with our cash reports. Cash on hand is $101 million. 68 million of that is in the operating. And then on the cash analysis, the breakdown of the 68 million has 59 million in the general fund. Okay. Then you'll see on the expenditure report, we brought in $11.2 million during the month, and that's about 76. That's and 161 for the year so far. So that puts us about 76% of our revenue budget. And then on the expenditures, if you go to the next one, Kay, I'm sorry. Yeah. On our expenditures, we spent $17.1 million in the month, 122 for the year, and that puts us about 58% of our budget at this point during the year. So that's about on track budgetarily. We go to the fourth page, that's our projection, and I know all the numbers are small, a little difficult to see, but the top section shows expenditures. We're projecting to be about $2.2 million under budget, so that's being about 1% variance. And then in the middle, the local revenues, you can see that we're projected to be about $2.4 million above the budget. Now, just remember also that we we did project a deficit for the year, but that would overcome that deficit. In the lower section in the total revenues, you'll see that we have under the third line, the second line there, state QBE, we have a little note there, estimated midterm. We did get information on the midterm budget, and they're projecting right now we would get $1,497,000 more based on our QBE earnings. So there's some more detail on that on the last sheet that we'll go over in a minute. So
that's good news.
That's real good
Y'all
news.
smile.
Yeah.
It's okay. That's good news.
So with that additional projection, that would put our projection of revenue, that will put our remaining fund balance at the very bottom after our strategic reserve. We would end up with about $8.4 million above the strategic reserve. So then we go to our three SPLOST reports, and first one is SPLOST 1. We still have Fayette County High School and the flexible furniture projects going on there. So there's about a little over $1 million left to spend there. In SPLOST 2, we're still making collections, $2.8 million this most recent month, so that was a very strong month. And then we have mainly 4 projects going on there, 4 areas: connected classroom, we're finishing up the South Complex renovations, security upgrades, which include the vestibules at different schools, and then some of the textbooks replacements and adoptions. And in SPLOST 3, the three projects going on there is the McIntosh High School addition, Fayette County High School renovations, and the LEC renovations. So we've expended a little over half of the $25 million in bond proceeds at this point, about maybe 70% of that at this point. So, and then that last sheet, excuse me, that last sheet that we went over, if you go down to the next page, there was like that separate page for QBE. Do you have that? It's not, it's a separate sheet. Yeah. The QBE estimate, and I just wanted to give you a breakdown of what we're looking at in the midterm. So I did a comparison between the initial projection for QBE, which is what they allotted us, and they made a few changes, but then they gave us an estimate on the midterm, so you can see that our QBE earnings have gone up about $1.5 million. So that would give us some additional revenue in the current year. So that's very good news.
Any questions or comments?
What, I did notice that there was a recent audit report that the university system may have shorted the TRS $600 million. That would certainly be helpful.
Yes.
If that could be collected. I don't know if it will or not, but thought that was
Yeah, hopefully they
interesting.
would knock down our TRS rate that the school systems are paying a little bit, because even next year, we already know it's going up just slightly, about 0.25%, but it's still going up versus down, and we really need that to start coming back down.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item 11, the consent agenda. You've seen the items there: employee travel, the school facility modification there, and the surplus of vehicle. We'd recommend the board approve the consent agenda.
Need a motion?
I have a question on the employee travel.
Yes.
The one from Sandy Creek going to China, how is that a duty leave?
I'd have to look at the specific, Mr. Rabel.
I saw the
as far
itinerary
as-
said there's gonna be 23 visitations, one of them might be to a school. How is that duty leave? The rest of them are just to the Great Wall. Matter of fact, it's called a trip to China and the Great Wall. I don't understand how that's a duty leave. And then there's another one from McIntosh that doesn't even list.
Yeah, it was
What
It was
do we
Whit
know?
Jones's, it was blank on the bottom up from Macintosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that one.
There's nothing there at all. It's asked for, request for 2 days of duty leave, and it doesn't say where they're going, what they're doing, anything, just 2 days duty leave.
Is that normally principal discretion that there is just?
There is principal approval prior to that. Let me pull those two. I'll get the additional information for you. And if, I would say this to our board: if you have questions like that before the board meeting, share those with us, and I'll do the legwork to try to track it down. I'm sorry I missed those two. But we'll, if we can, I'd want to go ahead and approve those that are there that meet your expectations. And I'll pull the McIntosh and the or Sandy Creek one, and we'll get an answer for you.
Dr. Bear, I can give some clarification on the
Okay.
Japan trip.
Okay.
Japan or China?
China.
Japan, the McIntosh Japan trip.
Oh,
I
that's
think
not-
it's that's a
The
different
Whit
one.
Jones, the one for Whit
okay.
Jones.
No,
that
it
you-
wasn't labeled was all it was.
It didn't say on there what it was.
Okay, it's a trip being offered through the, let me get it right, the America-Japan Council of Georgia. And so they've approached they're taking 3 high schools from across the state, one of them being McIntosh High School. And they're going on a cultural trip over to Japan for 10 days.
Okay, then I don't have a problem with that one.
All expenses are paid for that.
So we need a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the Sandy Creek trip.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? 5-0.
We'll get that clarification for the board and move towards maybe having it on our next agenda. Have a couple of action items. The Stagecoach property side approval. This is really more of a formality, but we need to have the board actually approve the site approval process. We've already done our phase 1 environmental study. We've done all this work. They've actually told us verbally that it's approved, but we need to be able to get the board to actually take a public vote. So we would recommend the board approve the Stagecoach property site approval request from the facility department at the DOE.
Okay. Second? Brian, second. All in favor? 5-0.
Okay, we've looked at item B, the proposed new logo. We would recommend to the board that we approve the excellence in our education and creativity where they merge together. The new design, we'd recommend the board approve.
Need a motion?
Second.
Roy Raybold moved, Leonard Pressburg seconded. All in favor? 5-0.
Okay, and last item, the Southern Conservation Trust maintenance agreement. We've been working on this for quite a while. We finally got the attorneys together. The easement has been agreed upon. We also have a custodial fee that we'd like to pay the Southern Conservation Trust. It's not included in this. We'll fill the date in. We'd like to do this for 5 years. Just as a matter of course, I think that's the last time we did a lease. We did it for 5 years, but we feel really good about it. We think it's going to be a great addition for the Whitewater community and certainly for all of our students across the district that want to use this new facility. We'd recommend that the board approve the Conservation Trust maintenance agreement.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? 5-0.
And just a couple of things on information. We do have the board training and retreat lined up for March 20th. We've got the whole board training that morning at Griffin Risa from 9 to 12. We'll have lunch there, and then we'll have our big idea retreat items. If there are items that the board specifically wants to discuss, now we won't take any action at a retreat, but if there are items that the board really wants to put on the table for conversation, please let me know and we'll have those items placed there. I do have a lot that I want to share with the board and based on some conversations we've been having over the last year. So reserve that 20th date. Graduation assignments, I know we don't have to do this this evening, but I did want to go ahead and alert you. I know, Mr. Anderson, you mentioned you have a daughter graduating. You might want to go to McIntosh. I think that would be appropriate. We'll give you a get-out-of-jail pass on that one already. But if you have some requests, certainly we want to be able to, our principals are going to be asking who's going to go where.
I actually will be out of town, and I'll have to, pass on my shaking hands duties this year. But next year, I think I'll have to go to Sandy Creek next year.
Yeah, you might have somebody graduating there as well.
I mean, I can do Sandy Creek this year if nobody.
I'd like to go to Whitewater.
Okay.
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 Did you get that, Kay?
Okay.
So Barry, I guess you get Fayette High or Stars Mill.
I'll go to one of the others.
Okay.
Either one's fine.
Okay.
I don't have a strong preference.
And, all right, well, we'll talk to the principals and see which one, maybe they'll
Yeah.
flip a coin over you. But we'll pull that together and head that up.
I should need to go to Fayette.
I think he wants to go to Fayette.
Okay, all right,
Fayette's
good deal. It is. I know that our new principal there, YBJ, she'd love to have our company. We do have executive session. I've got two real quick items. One that potentially shares of individual student information. The other is personnel. Shouldn't take long.
So we need a motion to move to executive session to discuss student personnel and personnel.
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Can you need a motion to return from executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? 5-0. Any recommendations from executive session?
No, sir, no recommendations.
All right. We're adjourned. Thank you.
We will work to try to adjust the lighting and a few other little creature comforts here. Thank y'all.